You know how all the good stuff says inspected by on it? This one says, you know, it's not inspected by number 1 or number 3. This one says inspected by T Suzuki. Okay guys, this is a Brannick 7600, and you are not gonna have one of these at home. I did this crap for 20 years before I got one of these, and was a professional for several years at home before I got one of these. But it is the best tool for doing struts, period. Hands down, this is what all the dealerships use, this is what all the big shops use, all your Firestones, all your NTPs, all that place. This is what the pros use. You're not gonna have one of these because these are like $800. But that's okay, because I have the next best alternative that works really well. This is the heavy duty coil spring compressor. This kit, mine is from SPC, but they are the same as the ones on Amazon. We'll put a link in the description to our affiliate link, and you guys can buy these. I think they're about 60, 75 bucks, something like that. I've seen them as high as 150 for the same thing. So we'll put a link in the description for that. Check those out. These are the safest homeowner use coil spring compressors. These are the ones you want. The ones that you rent from the auto parts store are downright dangerous. I've had those Bow. I have a set. I have like 5 different kinds of strut compressor because I've been through all of them. Take it from me, this is the way to go for the home mechanic and the semi-professional. Once you get to be big boy status and you got big boy shop like I got,
big boy
just now, you're gonna want one of these. But the principle is the same. So we're gonna compress the shock. Oh, we got ours mounted on an engine stand, so it rolls around the shop. You're gonna compress it a little bit. You'll notice we got some slack there. This is a flat, and you want to pay attention to which direction out was when you pulled it out of the strut. So I like to leave the cap kind of like this, and it has a little mark on it for where the little slot was. That way I know which way is out, because it does matter how the orientation goes back together. So the nut on top is 17 millimeter, and just like we talked about before, what you don't want to do is put an impact on this and zip it if you plan on reusing the strut. If you're gonna throw this thing in the garbage, zing baby, zing. But I use a big crescent wrench. They make a socket for this, but this works fine. These aren't under any load per se because they're not old and crusty. Most of these GXs, this nut doesn't get real bad. If it's got corrosion on it, you're gonna wanna take a wire brush and some PB Blaster and clean that off. But basically, you just do your ratchet wrench thing. And we're getting to the point where it's starting to squeeze off. So we'll pull that out of the way and hold the strut and take the nut off of here. The strut comes straight out the bottom. Bushing's back on, and this is ready for the next guy. Take the load off the strut compressor, and inside there is a washer, and we're not going to reuse that. Really all we need is this part with the studs, and so we're going to pop that out with a screwdriver, put that with our takeoff shock, and once again, it either goes in the scrap bin or to the next guy. Okay, so now we're going to prep our coilover for assembly. We take anti-seize and apply a liberal amount to the threads because we do not want our coilover to gall up. According to the instructions for our application, which is Toyota Land Cruiser Prado 150 series and FJ Cruiser, 8.38 inches, and that is from the bottom of the coil to the center of the hole. So we take our tape measure, we're going to measure here. We're at like 10 and a half, or almost 10. So we're gonna run this down. You'll notice I added some assembly lube between the seat and the spring. You can use anti-seize too. Something with a little more grease property works pretty well, but you don't want to use too much of it because it will attract dirt. But once the weight's on it, it won't. really move anything. So we're gonna measure here. We're at about 8.5. So we're pretty close. We're gonna come down another turn or two. Yep, that's right where we wanna be. Okay, and tip of the coil is gonna go right here. What I find at this point, because it is kind of hard to measure from here down when you're in the car, is go ahead and actually put that up to the bottom right there and get that dimension, which I find 8 inches works pretty great for like the 2.5-inch lift point. Our coils are C59 314s, which is the 2.5 kit. We do have 2 inches of rake, so we'll get about 2 3/4-ish on the front, and we'll wind up with about 1 inch in the rear, so that leaves a little over 1 inch of rake, roughly. It's about where we want to be. I find the rears usually settle a little bit. So we're going to run this bottom seat up. Right in there, make sure it turns smoothly. You don't want any tight spots. And we're not going to lock these, but we're just by hand just kind of seat them together so they don't really move. Okay, you'll notice you got a plethora of washers here. So there's one with a larger hole and one with a smaller hole. So the one with the bigger hole is going to go on the bottom. And since this truck is new, this bushing is still good, so we're going to run it. Let's stand this up. Put the boot over the top. We're going to take the thicker washer and put it on the bottom. And then we're going to head back over to the spring compressor. And this is going to go together with this on top. Once again, we noted we have our out mark. So let's head on over here to the spring compressor. Just like when we took it apart, we're going to take our coil. You want it to sit snugly and roughly centered. You'll notice this coil is quite a bit longer. So we'll run this up, take the hat. The pigtail has a mark where it ended. I usually like to go ahead and try to put that back where it was. And then rotate the coil so that your out is facing out. So we'll put a little bit of pressure on it, kind of hold her in place. Take your strut, insert from the bottom through the hole in the top, making sure your spring seat is seated properly. And then you run this guy down. Now that we're through, place our bushing and washer and the nut to hold everything in place. Now you may be tempted at this point to just grab an impact and zip that down. No, no, no. No, 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 no. We don't want to do that. So we're going to squish that a little bit. Verify the bottom of the spring is seated where it needs to be, because it will move on you. Okay, so how you want to do this is you want your 18 ratchet wrench, and then you want to hold the shock shaft still. What I find works best is to use a hex driver and then a breaker bar, 3/8 strap breaker bar, so that the shock shaft doesn't spin while you're tightening the nut. On this nut, you're going to want to make sure you snug it all the way down. You don't have to over tighten it, but you want to run it down where it stops. Okay. Okay, at this point, this is our out, and you can tell that our shock is out of line. You've got two options here. One, you can do like we're going to do, which is compress the coil a little bit and turn it. But you'll actually be able to adjust this once it's in the car and these pins are stuck in the strut tower. But we're going to do it now because we're here. So we'll put a little bit of compression on the coil, and then we'll just go ahead and turn that dude by hand. Try to get that line straight. And you can eyeball it. There's a little bit of deflection in there, and you can adjust it with a crescent wrench on the bottom. You can grab it at the bottom of the shock if you need to later on. But that's going to get us going. All right, time to put it in the truck. So this is where our clocking comes into play. So installation is the reverse of disassembly. up in here, and then just a slight press on the bottom puts that in there. This is the part where I like to go ahead and put the bottom bolt in, because on the passenger side it kind of is pushed up into the studs at the top. And the reason I put the bottom in first is because if you tighten the top, it's going to pull the shock outward because of the deflection. Yahtzee. Yahtzee! So put the lower bolt in loose, and then the nuts on the upper strut. Like we talked about when we took them apart, do the rear one last, so then you can run it down by hand, so you don't have to fight it for so long. Alrighty, now we gotta go get our control arm out of the box. Dobinsons supplies you with new washers. I really don't know what the difference is, but I typically use them just so, because, you know, I don't know, whatever. They come with it. The bolt is still chilling where it was. Use the washer. Make sure you face the washer with the bell out. Also make sure you grab the right, in this hand, the correct control arm. Mind you, it goes under the ABS wire. Same method going back in. We're gonna feed it using the washer so you don't have to tear a bunch of stuff up. So you just take bites with the washer, slip it up into place. You do have to finagle with it a little bit. I will say it's a little easier when you don't have a camera in the way. But feed the bolt through the arm, start the arm on the cross shaft, and then use the washer and your fingertips to get the bolt started. They usually start pretty easy. It's that next 8 inches that takes all the effort. You just kind of want to wiggle the arm so it's not bound up. And feed it in there. You'll feel it hit the other side. When you get to this point, you can grab it with a 19 and just push it through. That way you can see it's protruding here. Same thing, washer facing out, and you're done. However, do not torque this thing down yet, because we want to do that at right height. At this juncture, we can reinstall our upright. I usually find it easier to do it first. Start the nut, and I'll show you a little something about castellated nuts. Okay, so castellated nut, you can see the hole is at a certain depth. Some ball joints take a washer right here and some don't. And the thing you got to make sure is that the cotter pin is going to be fully seated inside that castellation. You don't want it to loosen itself, but in the case of like a wheel bearing, you don't want it to over tighten itself either. Ask me how I know. Down here, we're gonna put the tie rod back on. There we go. Okay, you can snug those up to Torx back. All right. Okay guys, sorry about the audio on that last little bit. I did not plug in lav mic. So, sorry. I had to change the battery on the GoPro. All right, so this side is pretty much done. We're gonna put our hardware back in for our ABS and brake lines. Once again, make sure that you run the ABS on the outside. It goes right here on the little stud, and then there's a nut. It comes in with your control arm kit. Make sure you put this bracket back on because we don't want any of this stuff moving around. You'll notice it kind of pulls tight right here. We'll put that together, start it. Okay, and then because we have a little more travel, what I normally do is just take this bracket and just give it a tweak so that it's not under tension. You can open it up like that, and that just takes a little bit of pressure off of it. That's all you really got to have. You want it retained, but you don't want it being pulled. Okay, snug all those pieces back up, and this side is done. So just like doing the rear, I'm gonna go ahead and knock out the other side because it takes me way longer to talk about it than it does just to knock it out and do it. Don't forget your cotter pin here and here on your tie rod, and then once I get the other side put together, I'll show you how to torque everything down and we'll set ride heights. Well, one thing I forgot to mention to you guys, the passenger side is pushed up, driver's side is pushed down by the sway bar when you have KDSS. So on the driver's side, you may need to put a jack under it. Keep it from falling down. Driver's side is now all put together, and so the trick here is just going to be to pull the skid plate out of the way, or if you've already removed it. So using the jack to slowly pressurize the sway bar. Don't have to, but I am using the new Harbor Freight Badlands jack. Check out our review and initial impressions on that one. I'm just going to start these by hand because you do not want to cross thread these. So mount the bracket, cruise over here to the passenger side. Okay, and same procedure in the rear. And of course, the cherry on top of all this work. Ka-chow. Ka-chow. All right, that's it. There she is. Pimping ain't easy, kids.
All right, guys, that concludes this episode, episode 4, where we put all of the front suspension back together on this Lexus Blackline. This episode was a little bit longer just because we went step by step, and the front suspension is certainly a little bit more detailed than the rear shock by itself. We're glad to be nearing the end of this series, and then in the next and last episode we'll go through the final steps of tightening everything down, getting the suspension to settle, sending it off to alignment, test driving it, and sending her home. Stay tuned, and if you like what you see on the channel, make sure you click this video right here. Please like, subscribe, share with your friends, and smash that bell, and we'll see you on the next one.